thanks for having me, Tolani. Um, my background is simple, right? I was into this industry more than 20 years, mostly in the AI and machine learning side. Um, Before there was a machine learning hype, I was literally doing a neural network coding, and I've seen this 20 years growth, extraordinary growth in the AI side. And I've built a multiple products in this last 20 years, worked on a variety of companies and teams. Now, recently, my there was a shift in my focus. My focus is that with all the learnings what I had, and how can I take those automation AI, help the community, help specifically the enterprise companies, vendors and buyers, and how do we help them to buy the right products and then get this whole automation and AI to the next world? That's where my focus right now. Yeah, so that's about me, quick lines.
You've been sharing your vision for educating the world on the importance of automation and document AI on LinkedIn. What is that all about?
Oh yeah, see, there's two things really growing great today in the industry. One is on the AI. As I said, AI is amazing growth in the last 15, 20 years. The second part is the automation part. The extraordinary growth in automation is the second one. Now, my focus right now is that I'm very obsessed with the automation. However, my background is AI, right? These two things, it's almost like kind of, mind and body, right? It's time to unify them. So my focus is on a two area. One, how do we unify these two so that they can propel and accelerate the growth, both in the AI and also automation? That's one part. Second part is that the mindset. I mean, that matters a lot today, right? And all we have been telling ourselves all these years that hey, we grow 5%, 2%, 8% growth, but that's not right. We need to change our mindset. Why can't we have a 2x, 5x, 10x growth? Because that's what we have been seeing in the AI and automation side in the last 20 years. There is no linear growth, there is exponential growth. So now I have a two focus right now. My vision is that how do we help people to change their mindset to look at exponential growth. At the same time, how do you combine AI and automation and then create an intelligent automation? That's my two focus right now. So all my work recently is kind of driving this, helping people, like making them to think in this way. So you take automation AI and think in terms of exponential growth, apply these two things, push your industries wherever you work, and overall, humanity has to grow. So that's my focus recently, Jalan.
You've actually mentioned something that is quite important. It's the people mindset. And this is something I've experienced, just being in the intelligent automation space. So my experience comes from RPA. So I've been in the RPA space 7 years, doing all sorts of automation. And one thing that has never really changed is the mindset. People are, scared of automation, for example. People are scared of AI. They feel that they might lose their jobs to bots, or they feel that there is. And I think some of this, some of the inspiration behind this is just based on what we watch. When you see some of the movies in the cinema, I love the Marvel movies, and what they actually portray sometimes could be very detrimental to to people watching these shows or people watching these movies because they're really scared. How do you go about changing the mindset for companies, for large companies, for example, or just in general?
Oh yeah, see, you're absolutely right. I was watching this Best World recently. You know that's exactly going on. Now, see, today there is a lot of fear in terms of job. At the same time, also the mindset more I'm focusing on, people are not getting it. They think like a very linear growth. There's two areas here. So this is where we need to educate people. Automation fundamentally, statistics says automation fundamentally helps for more jobs, really, right? And also automation kind of gives you the power to improve your lives all around, right? And this is what happening from the industry revolution all the way today. So that's a one thing. At the same time, now helping specifically the COE in the enterprise companies, hey, think from a exponential growth. At the same time, you are not going to change your company's employees here, right? The one team member, whatever he is delivering value today, he or she could give a 5x to 20x output using this. So now you're not losing job. The person is actually creating a more output, right? So that's how we need to look at it. At the same time, overall, the industry is moving forward. So there's a little shift in the mindset. That's what we need to focus today.
You've taken us to the past, and you've talked about the Industrial Revolution. That's that's a part of history I really love, and I usually give that example. I usually tell people that with all these machineries that we've had in the past, it's really taken some of the drudgery work. It's made people much more efficient, and we have used it and we've forgotten. Right, everyone has forgotten that we've gone through that stage, and these are things that are still operational. No one would want to do any of this work manually at this point. Even the farmers would want to use mechanized farming. So these are kind of interesting, interesting highlights about automation. But let's take it, a step backwards. Let's talk about IDP. What is IDP, and if you could probably give us in layman terms.
See, the word has a meaning in it. IDP, right? Intelligent Document Processing. So let's take a one at a time. Take a document. What is a document? Anything in a human readable format is a document. In that definition, any paper documents which you scan it is a document. Any PDF documents are a document. Emails are document. Now, beyond that, even a web page is document because that's like nice and clean, a readable format, right? You read it. So those are all the documents. Now, that's a document definition of document. Now, look at the intelligence side. What do we mean by intelligent here? How do you apply AI or any intelligence to understand the semantic and layout meaning of a document? So that's the intelligent part. Without intelligence, it'll be more of a rule based. You can't do much processing. So that's the intelligent part. Now let's go to the processing. What do we mean by processing here? The processing, varieties of processing can be possible, but let's focus one thing. That's a capture part. How do we capture the essential or key relevant points from the document? So that's one of the important process we do. However, there are many other processes we can do, right? So now I combine these three things. What do we do? If there is a document, how do I capture the relevant information through intelligent process? That's fundamentally IDP. Now, having said that, the spectrum is large though, because the documents could be a sparse documents like an invoice, all the way a knowledge intensive documents like healthcare, or even a complex dynamic web pages. That's the document side. And then the intelligence side, it could be a simple intelligence, hey, extract my email ID, or all the way go to the rightmost, hey, extract a very important insight from a document. The processing is simple capture to all the way to the most complex capturing part, more important things, right? So now this is how I would say IDP. But beyond that, there is also, we can say, with this IDP, is it a developer product or is it a business user product? Now, from that definition, I would say more a no code platform and simple intuitive UX. With all of these things today, what happens with a great browser based most of the time? With this kind of product, we do this intelligent document processing. So that's how I define IDP.
I want to talk about OCR, like optical character recognition. And months ago, I read an article from Forbes, and it was described as fine wine, right? Was it fine wine or was it new wine? I can't remember, but it was a very popular article. And I sort of thought about it. Are these people actually saying that, IDP is a cherry on top? Is it a cherry on top of OCR itself? What is the fundamental differences between them, and how do people, maybe before we come back to how do people use them, but let's talk about the fundamental differences between them.
So yeah, see, I would not agree at all that IDP is a cherry on top of OCR. That's absolutely not right. Why? Even without OCR, still it's IDP. As I said initially, only for the scanned documents you are supposed to run an OCR, right? Optical character recognition. Otherwise, you don't need to, because all our digital documents today already, web pages, PDF documents, native PDF documents, Word documents, already a native digital document. So there's nothing OCR goes on it. One thing. Now the next is, as I initially said, it's all about varieties of intelligence you apply and then the process you do. The process is a very interesting part. We start with the capturing though, but then we're not stopping there. It is keep on evolving. Even you can apply a question answering. Now imagine there's thousands of documents and you do all the capturing part. Then can you apply question answering? I ask a question, you get an answer directly from the document, right? So these are all IDP, how it's evolving. And in my perspective, IDP is just an infant. It'll go IDP 2.0, 3.0 is going to evolve much, much bigger today. And OCR is a one tiny component of this overall IDP space. Only that is important when there is a scanned documents involved, right? So that's how I look at it.
There's a whole lot to unpack from what you've said. I think I found that very funny when you said, no, I don't agree with that. And there's a lot of people don't agree with what I say, but that's great. It means I'm saying something. So it's great. Let's talk about some of the IDP product. There's a lot of product on the market. As you said earlier, it depends on the type of IDP you're looking for, whether it's the business, sort of a business centric IDP, where you also mentioned the word no code as well, or if it was a developer IDP. Let's look at those two differences. What's your preference?
See, as I said, that there are varieties of documents available today, right? Healthcare, mortgage documents, and all. Now, if you are a buyer, then you need to look at that what kind of documents you have, what kind of process you want to do. For that process, what intelligence necessary, and who is your end user persona? Someone a business person or a developer. You need to look at all of them and decide which product you want to buy. Now, the good news is there are all types of product already there in the market, right? Now, a developer-focused product, and then a very shallow documents like an invoice-focused product, a very knowledge-intensive document, and also there are certain IDP products coming in the market which can process web pages too. Now there is a varieties of shapes to this IDP space, right? Now there are certain products, by the way, claims that they can do everything. Now, if you are looking for a platform kind of a style, then I would suggest go look at a platform where it can support all types of documents, including web pages, all type of processing, all type of intelligence. But if your focus is that, hey, I'm a buyer, I'm literally focusing on invoice automation, maybe then focus on the specific type of a document and then who can do a better, and that's what I would buy that. And also, Matt, depends on what is your persona. As I said, you can have a business user. If the business user is going to use it, then you need to have a great intuitive UX, maybe a browser based or something deployed, and then beyond on top of that, you need to look at all kind of security and safety of the documents, right? Because documents are all something important, and now there's so many cybersecurity issues happening. And where do you want to deploy the documents? So that's another space we have to think of, right? So now combining all of them, what kind of persona, what kind of security you want to think about it, and then what are all the documents you have. And now, as I said, there are a lot of products available in the market, and then need to do a thorough understanding and buy the right product here.
That's a nice way to look at things, because in the past I'd surveyed a whole lot of IDP products on the market, particularly the ones that could be very useful for areas that are very highly regulated. And I think this is where you start differentiating between platform solutions, point solutions, and also looking at the security levels and different other things. So it's always advisable for people to do their due diligence. But it depends on how people want to do it, whether you want to do it with some service provider, but it's advisable you do it before spending a lot of money. There's a whole lot of money involved. So before spending a lot of money, it's very crucial. Then coming back from there, let's delve deeper into the topic. Let's start talking about some of the business challenges. The business challenges, I think the business challenges and IT challenges are quite different. I feel sometimes they don't even overlap. Sometimes they don't even overlap. Even when you get IT and the business people on one call, everyone's priorities are completely different. And I think one of the things I've seen in the being in the industry for a while is when it comes to AI, not just intelligent document processing, there's a lot of tinkering and tweaking AI models. So, some I've seen organizations that will tell you that if they're not getting, let's say, 95% accuracy, they won't be deploying, the model into production. And there's a whole lot of, companies still experimenting with AI and all that. But how do we reduce this barrier for companies looking to move this into production, start productionizing IDP models?
This is a great question. I've been thinking about this for a long time. I literally involved in these kind of projects, and it's very frustrating. If a model refresh takes like a month and month, that's not acceptable in a business. So, what I see today, there are a lot of growth happening in the IDP products now. This one of the concept about MLOps, ML operations now, and then now when you go to the ML development, there is a concept of labeling, meaning which is a training. Then you go for a model generation, and then you probably need to orchestrate all the models. And then whenever you want to refresh the models, and then to go back all the way in the ML ops side, right? And then, hey, how do I redo all of them and make sure everything goes through? Now, interesting is if now I'll first talk about a bad thing. Now, if you keep it everything separately, right, a silo, all get fragmented. Where there will be a separate team for labeling, all the way a separate team for modeling, and then everything is going to be different. That's what a lot of a little old world. But now it's changing a lot. It all comes together nice and clean. A vertically integrated product is coming in the market, right? Now, the product, what it does is that a labeling in the product, inside the product, MLOps part of the product, and then you want to refresh the model part of the product, right? It's vertically integrated. That's why sometimes I tell people, it's no more like a camera and phone are separate. It's together. That's what our brand new phones nowadays, right? And long back ago, you have all kind of devices separately. Now everything on one single device. That's how today this IDP or any intelligent automation product, what it does, MLOps to all the way training to everything. And then more importantly, when you want to go for a high quality models, now how much state of the art pre-trained model and language model you adopt is matters a lot. Now that also part of your MLOps. And MLOps is ready to, let's say tomorrow there's a new language model, open source model, come to the industry. Can you adopt it in a minute, right? How do you do that? And that's also part of the MLOps. And then the last piece is that, yeah, pre-trained model for your niche documents. Let's say you're focusing on a legal documents, for example, right? Now, do you have a pre-trained language model for a large scale legal documents or health document? That's yet another part. So now what I see for your question, hey, how do we reduce the time? One is simple things, right? One, make sure it is a vertically integrated product. So you're not working silo, not fragmented. That gonna give you amazing. And second, and make sure your product is so ready to adopt a brand new models and brand new open source concepts so that you can keep the cycle much faster. So that's the two things I would probably suggest here to bring your overall speed super fast. Yeah.
That was a very rare answer because a lot of people would have talked about data. That's usually the first thing people talk about, not having access to data or, generating data. But it was a very rare answer, and I really love that. Then you mentioned, I think there were a few things you mentioned I kind of picked on. One was the MLOps, right? So what is MLOps, just to give us a bit of context?
Oh yeah. So see, if you go prior to MLOps, it's a software development lifecycle, right? And then in there, we have a nice and clean, more than 20, 30 years, we are all doing software development as a humanity. Now we have developed and then our maturity is much better. Agile methodology, varieties of methodology. Now we know what to do and then how we take a project and then plan for it and then you go do all kind of cycle. But in a machine learning side, it's a different type of operation. Why? Because you take a data and then you go build a model and then you come to know the model is not right. There are some challenges, the underlying probability distribution is wrong. Whatever, you go back and again bring a more data set or refine the data set or you synthetically create a data set. You do varieties of stuff. Now, what happens here is that in the as part of this ML ops, Now we are streamlining this end to end much faster. Otherwise, it's become a fragmented one. Keep it in a one single loop, a nice and clean loop that any process that steps going like A, B, C, D, all the way the loop is super clean, integrated, so that your overall output is coming quickly. So that's the overall MLOps side, which includes from all the way labeling to model generation, even a model management. Let's say there is a drift on the underlying data set, you build a varieties of versioning of the same model. How do you manage the versions? And all comes under part of the MLOps today.
Thanks for that. That was very insightful. And there is some, I think there's quite a lot to unpack from what you've said, which is quite interesting. But what I wanted to find out is MLOps being managed by the service provider, or is it the onus on the organizations to manage that?
So there is a multiple options today. One, the ML ops is kind of has a separate COE in some of the organizations, and some are the whole ML as part of the product itself. I've seen some of the IDP products; they do have this whole ML ops part of that. You can see their models coming through, the model versionings coming through, and all kind of things, and then you can say, hey, you know what, this model I'm not liking it because it's 95.2. There's one more model I got it yesterday night. I'm going to replace the model, and it's all automated way, right? So two things happening right now: a part of the product itself, some of the products, and sometimes we have the separate COE for large organizations. If you want to have a consistency across teams to build a similar way of modeling, and then they have a separate MLOps. And also, by the way, there are many MLOps product itself in the market, which we can explore and then see which goes best. And by then the last point is that open source MLOps. And then there are so many. GitHub, if you see, there is a great open source MLOps tool which anyone can adopt today.
For those watching and listening to us, it's like Ansari is giving a lot of wealth of information. So send your check to him after this recording to let you know that he's doing a lot, which is quite interesting. I think that's the unique thing about when you bring different guests, everyone has different viewpoints on how the industry, how they see the industry moving and evolving. And coming back to the next business challenge I want to discuss with you is data. So when we talk about data, what I've seen associated with data is usually number one, low quality data, scanned document, whatever you might call it, handwritten document, just the quality of the data. Then there's also insufficient data. I think that's a very big issue, and in itself, it's a very big issue. There is also data portability, being able to make data available in different formats. Apologies, there's a whole lot going on outside my house. Then there's also access rights to data. And I think this comes from, I live in Europe, so we are constrained by what we can do with data. There's the GDPR as well, which is data protection, for the EU members. So there's a limit to what you can do with data, because customers can actually opt for their data not to be part of any automated activities. So it's a whole lot of, I think it's dynamics in Europe, and I think there's another in the US. I believe there's also something quite similar to that in California as well, in terms of data rights and all that. But let's talk about data for a second, and how can businesses mitigate all these data challenges?
See, your question has multiple sub questions, right? One is like, how do you manage this low quality data, and then low data, and then the challenges in terms of security and all kind of thing, right? So let's go one at a time. The low quality data, the beauty is now, that's why I initially said like AI and automation has to come together. Now, anytime you have a data, you can also use the automation itself to produce more data. And that's what I've seen. Like, a few days ago, there was a paper which says that to build automation coding, and now the AI produces a more synthetic data set. right? Meaning that you create a more synthetic data set. So this is where this AI and automation, we need to put our creative thinking here. How do we synthetically produce more data set, and what is the underlying probability distribution, and then how do you put a math there and understand the data set, right? So that's one area. And also you could try to bring like varieties of transfer learning, meaning look at the similar domain, other domain. How do you bring that knowledge into this smaller data set so that you can improve overall quality? So that's one area about the low quality or low data, right? Now, going back to your other question, that in general, folks want to opt out on the data. There's a lot of data in a political environment and all JRP thing. That is something is kind of a very a challenge today. It's a very hard problem to solve in my perspective. Again, I'm not expert on that area, and a few reasons, right? For example, there was a great thing going on in the DALI, which creates image, right? Now, how many millions of images they've used? Was there any image somehow, involve any persons? And if I want to opt out, how do I do that? It's very hard because the model is already built. People are already using it. Now, if I say, you know what, wait, there is a one image I saw which involves me. I want to remove that image in the data set. How do you do that? Because the model is already out, right? So it's very challenging today. And now even the European environment perspective, you don't want a data to go out, but already the model is out. How do you control it? How do you bring it back? It's a very hard problem to we all need to think about it. And I do not have a solution right now, but it's something where all leaders has to come through and think through on this and how do we solve this.
It's a very great answer. There was no right or there was no wrong answer. I just wanted to put you on the spot, just so you know. So I asked you a very loaded question. I know there's an advanced, I think people call the ICR like an advanced OCR technology that deals with, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that deals with handwritten documents, which are quite complex, especially within the healthcare domain. Doctors' prescriptions, there's a lot of them that's, doctors are, they just scribble something on notes. It's a miracle that pharmacists or chemists or whatever can actually understand what the doctors have written. It's a surprise. It's a shock in itself. And there are other legal documents as well where there's a whole lot going on with them. And I think lastly there was something that happened that was remarkable. So last year we had the population census being done in Ireland. And obviously, it's not every year. Some of the data has been extrapolated over the years. But we had something, and I can remember there was an option, obviously, to fill the form online, but the government was issuing a lot of paper forms. So I had this form that was that was a 12-pager, asking me a lot of information, and it was quite rigid because they had told me that I had to use a particular pen. I couldn't use red. I couldn't, just the way it was a yes or no checkbox. I had to do it in a particular way. So I couldn't have the lines going, over to different checkboxes. So I could already tell based on the restriction that they had this high hopes of scanning this for a particular use. Then I'm just thinking about all these handwritten documents. How do companies actually, you know, get a lot of value from them?
There's so many great things happening in the AI. One not so great news is that we still do not have a general purpose hand recognition tool. Very surprising though, because now amazing thing going on AI. Why couldn't we have a one tool, general purpose, just like at least the human quality? Beyond human quality is different. At least the human quality, right? Unfortunately, we haven't had that kind of a thing. So that's a bad side. But the good side is now for a specific domain documents though, now we have a clear enough system available to fine tune those models. As you said, like if you want to focus only on the healthcare, which was written by specific group of doctors or whomever, and how do you fine tune those models? It's there. It's easy for us. We can do it in a week, 2 week. You can onboard any system. Now, even then, very complex handwritten, like what you said, right? Some of the doctors write very challenging, right? I can't. By the way, I couldn't understand anything there once written. So It's very challenging, that part. Now, those things, it's still hard, and bringing it like 95% is very hard today. And some of the systems are trying to solve. And but how they solve is they're like bringing a much more domain knowledge, right? They will understand all the, for example, the drug names, right? The adverse effects and everything. They already have that backstory. Now, with that knowledge, they try to fill. Oh, you know what? This is what most likely going to be returned. So they're doing that. So as I said, it is still a problem. We haven't solved yet. And then I my expectation or my prediction is that within a year or two, I'm sure we are going to have an absolute open source handwritten recognition tool from some big companies, which will be a general purpose handwritten tool, will have at least a human level quality. That's my expectation, my prediction too. I hope it will happen. But till that time, the only way what we can do is that you go fine tune your model for your specific domain documents. That's all. That's all we have today. The options are.
I love optimistic people, and it's quite good. That's why I've called you like the IDP visionary leader, because you're very optimistic about the technology and how the technology is going to evolve in the future. And this brings me to another question, just around governance. I know we've touched on governance quite, I think lightly we've touched on governance. And one question I usually get is, how much governance do we need to impose? I'll give you just a bit of context. Within the automation space, I'm in the RPA space as it is every time, and companies are trying to put in like 5, 6 layers of approvers, for example. So just for example, just to get something to production could take 2 weeks because of the whole governance structure. Everyone is trying to make sure this is all right. There's no room for failure, which I understand. It's great, but sometimes you can already tell that, do I need this level of governance to get something into production? This is not really great if you think about we being agile. And I think a lot of companies use that very lightly. They say we are agile, but we don't really operate as as an agile development team. So how much governance is required?
I would go with the spectrum right here. One in the lower side, you have a very simple problem, and there's nothing much governance. Like some developer go just do a prototype, right? Instead, and then the sponsor of that particular project look at it and give them a feedback and they review it, and then a week, 2 weeks, it's up and running. That's all. That's how I see it. But that's in this side. But then if you go to all the way the other side of the spectrum, a large complex project, right? There is a 200 types of healthcare documents coming. Okay, great. What do you want to capture? And how do you want to search? And do you want any intelligence on top of it? Do you want to have a question answering? What kind of modeling you want to build, right? Now, who is the end user? The end user is like, want to do you have a multiple personas of end user, right? One of the legal team is that they have a legal manager. They have all the way to a CXO level legal person. So why it is a persona? So who is going to use it? Now, if you look at that perspective, that needs a governance. Why? First, you need to look at from the persona perspective, who is going to use the product. Are you building the right product, right? You would be expecting a horse, someone is delivering a donkey, not a good idea. Now, that's the one. Second, when you look at the problem, let's say once you have a clarity on the problem, when you want to solve it, that needs a design thinking. It's almost like a mathematical problem. If you give a 10 people, 10 people will come at different 10 solution, all are right though, right? Now we need to find an optimal solution here. That needs a design thinking. So as a team need to come together and sit together and say, what is the challenge? How do we solve the problem? Where do we put a ML ops here, right? Where do we put a training? And then how do you make a more iterative than a waterfall, right? Can I start seeing like in the next 2 days from now, and then I keep improve it? So this certainly needs a governance model. So there should be a sponsor. There should be a one clear automation leader sitting in that room with a couple of people on a team to solve this problem. A very focused group. When I say governance, I'm more focusing on the lean governance, not like so many cooks in the kitchen, right? So a lean governance, and that I would suggest. But that's what I would say. It's kind of a spectrum. You go to the lower end, one developer show a prototype, it's good to go. All the other end, that a complex project needs a tailored governance. That's how I see it. Yeah.
I love that. We don't really need all the cooks in the kitchen to get a meal out. So it's quite interesting when you explain it that way. And sorry, I thought about something. I'm going to tell you a funny story. In 2017, when intelligent automation became a buzzword, but around that time you had hyper automation as well. So everyone was trying to name the whole intelligent automation space because they realized that RPA, which was coined by Blue Prism and HFS at that point, wasn't wasn't going to do everything. You didn't have all the intelligence you needed. It was all routine, the hands of automation and all that. And every vendor on the market I can remember started renaming their product. So they went from, it was almost like an haha moment. They went from being an RPA vendor or a BPM vendor or an iPaaS vendor or an IDP vendor into becoming an intelligent automation vendor. And I think my perspective of intelligent automation is, if you're going to, I don't believe that you can have that from one vendor. And the reason why I don't think so is just, it's a gamut of technologies. It's not just one, and it's very difficult for one vendor to have all of this technology that an enterprise will need. An enterprise has average, might have like a large enterprise, 300, 400 applications. So you're going to tell me that your product is going to be able to work with all the applications. So I found it very challenging at that point. And I want to ask you, from your opinion, like, have you really seen a lot of this? Would you really consider, IDP vendors as an intelligent automation vendor?
Right. I before I go and answer this, right, I wanna we will make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of intelligent automation. As I as I said all the way in the start of this call, intelligent automation. Let's separate out. And what is automation? Anything that you automate of your mundane task or humanly impossible task, right? Anything you want to automate is automation. Now, what is intelligence? Intelligently, if you do it, what does that mean? That means you need some level of human thinking necessary to solve it, right? Otherwise, it's a rule based, right? Now, if you want to differentiate between a cat and dog, it's you cannot write a rule based algo at all. You need a AI algo. It's simple. And the same thing goes to face recognition. Something goes to structure in the documents. Now, do you need AI? Absolutely, you need AI. And somehow, sometimes these IDP companies without AI, they have like rule based, but they claim AI. But that's fine. Don't worry about those people, right? Now, think about the actual IDP products, which they do have AI, because without AI, you cannot understand the semantic meaning of a content and cannot understand the layout, cannot understand the reading order. There are so many challenges going on. You need to do OCR, which also based on AI. Now, there is intelligence involved. And then, do they do automation? Yes, they do automation. But again, automation comes in two different varieties. Given a document, I capture data. That's like one small piece of automation. Given a document, I capture it, I process more other stuff, and then I pull a different documents and I reconcile them, and then I combine them, and then I do various other processes, and then I submit it to third party. That's also an automation, right? So automation is a small piece, and then all the way to a large piece. Now, from that definition, what I see, again, I'm not talking about all IDP products, like major IDP products today. In my perspective, they do intelligent automation, but then they cannot claim that intelligent automation for everything, but they are intelligent automation for unstructured documents, right? So from that definition, I kind of agree they are right, but again, it's a core thing is that do they do automate really, and is there really intelligence there? Yeah, if they both are there, yeah, why not, right? In my perspective, I would say it's intelligent automation.
That's an interesting way to view these intelligent automation space. All IDP vendors that I know of will tell you that they have, they have knowledge for invoice processing, whether it be in the EU invoices or whatever kind of invoices. So they have knowledge contained. And I've also seen another vendor that tell you that they don't really have any of this, pre-built models, and their clients would have to build the models themselves, blah blah blah. But what do you think is invoice processing? Is I feel that it's a very simple use case. Pardon my again, I may be just saying that based on what I've seen. I see that as a very very simple use case. It doesn't really scratch the surface because companies will definitely look beyond, invoice processing. Obviously, they will start with invoice processing, but eventually they will, start looking beyond invoice processing to actually automate some knowledge intensive document. Now, just talk about the dynamics of that.
Right. See, the invoice documents, as I said, that's kind of simplest problem today, right? A lot of the IDP companies try to handle that, and then all the AI necessary for your invoice understanding is completely different than what you need for knowledge intensive. Because that's like a legal documents, medical documents, right? You need to understand the semantic meaning of it. It's very complex. Generally the human languages are generally complex, but invoice is not even a human language. It's kind of a table, right? So you go understand it line by line and then get the data. Now, many IDP companies have a pre-built models ready, focusing on a varieties of, again, a subdomains in the invoice industry itself, and they give you a point solution to you, right? If that's what works for it, fantastic, we can take it and just go do it. But if you look at the IDP industry in general, and as I said initially, there is a simple documents to the complex documents. If you want to go in for the IDP platform though, it's a little different. IDP point solution, yeah, take this one. But IDP platform today, how this all evolving, I think in my perspective, invoice is kind of done, right? And the industry is moving forward, and then that because the invoice literally solved, all type of invoices. And now we are more focusing on how do we help the SMEs in the knowledge intensive side. There, the IDP product, what Foc- focusly built for invoice is not at all ready for knowledge intensive document. They need to completely go underlying, re-architect everything from their back end to the language models to everything, right? And then they are evolving. There are other products which is started with the knowledge intensive documents. They go backward and they solve the invoice too, but they are more focused on the knowledge intensive documents. So my perspective is that for your question, the IDP products are varieties of products, but now it so many IDP products are all talking about only the invoice. But I think the industry has evolved, and now there are more because the more enterprise companies are getting aware about this whole IDP space. They are telling, hey, you know what? I have a contract document, like a 20,000 contract document. What can I do with that? Okay, there's a knowledge intensive. So how do we solve that? So now there is a pressure from enterprise companies too to the IDP folks. Hey, you know what? There's a problem coming now. The IDP players understand this overall space and they're saying, okay, now we'll go from there. And then not only there, we are also going one step ahead, web pages. Why? There is a 1 trillion web pages being added every year in the internet, right? Then if you want to do, let's say, a media monitoring automation, you want to go look at all the press releases and all kind of documents, which is again yet another challenges. So it starts with the invoice though. I mean, that's the starting point of this whole IDP. But now we have moved on. There is a great opportunity IDP players are looking around for the much complex documents. So now we are all re-architecting, redoing, and then now that's where I see this IDP 2.0, 3.0 lightly evolving there.
I think you mentioned something that I love talking about, and it's quite an unusual topic. Whenever I've surveyed IDP vendors for different purposes, of course, whether to work with them or to get them for different reasons, I've always seen that I kind of compare. For example, I compare the input document types. What kind of documents are possible with this vendor. And when we look at some of those documents, they're usually the simple types like PDFs, TXT. Some of them would say they work with CSV, which CSV, some would say they work with Excel and a variety of documents. But web pages, you mentioned web pages. Web pages are it's very unusual because not a lot of vendors would tell you, would boast to their chest that they work with web pages. And just talking about the dynamics, I know you've said this a few times where you say the just talking about it technically, a lot of the vendors use like web pages. They crawl those web pages. And for those that actually listen to us, it's like using automation tools like RPA, Selenium. There's another, I think there's a package in Python as well that I see a lot of people use, like it's I think it's called Beautiful Soup or something like that for crawling web pages. But again, there's a lot of dynamics, which obviously I'm not going to talk about, where you crawl that and they block your IP address, basically. But I'm not going to talk about that one for now. when we look at that web page crawling, should that be the strategy for that kind of thing? I just feel like it's quite intensive to actually, get that document. And it's not just getting the web page. I'm seeing some vendors convert that web page into some other format that's been ingested into their product. For example, some people would convert that web page into a TXT, some might convert into some, not at all, like very few would tell you that they work with HTML files, but I've seen, different conversion rates, but it doesn't really look like that strategy or that or whatever something is going on with that. Could you touch on that?
Oh yeah, see, converting into a different format, you lose all the layouts, all the rich information, it's gone. Then you cannot understand that overall the real core meaning, right? Now, think about a web page. For example, take a simple problem like entity understanding. Let's say you want to understand, let's say there's a company, you want to understand the CEO and all the people there, you want to build some automatic tool. You crawl, go to the About Us page, and then you look at that CEO information. But whether he or she is a CEO or not, it's all depends on the layout. The title probably may be there, may not be there. If you convert it to text, you lose the context. You cannot understand what the person is, where their LinkedIn profile is. You miss all the information. What you truly need is that, just like the way how human is browsing. When I browse, when I look at in the Chrome browser or any browser, I see as the way how it rendered. Right? I need to look at the way that it rendered. Now I put an AI there and say, hey, AI, go look at that visual aspect, and then look at the semantic aspect, and now take both of them, then you understand it. So that's how it's supposed to be. But as you said, right, this is also a broken thing today in the market. We do a Selenium, a beautiful super all, take the web pages. That itself is a problem because you lose already context. A lot of things is gone because even there is a pop-up will show you the description of the CEO title. But that is interactive is gone already because you're already converting that page into all the hidden elements are gone, all the hidden HTML notes are gone. Problem. And then the problem two is that now the layout is gone. Now when you apply AI or IDP, it's a very problematic. What is the ideal way? Whether do we have an ideal way of solving the problem or not today, but we need to talk about the ideal way, right? Then some startup founder will say, oh, I'm going to build it in a year down the line. But that's fine. So now the ideal way is that you need to have an intelligent browser, a Chromium-based browser, probably a headless-based browser, browses it automatically, right? And while it browsing, you need to apply IDP. It should be tightly integrated. I'll crawl while I'm crawling. I render it in my virtual machine or virtually. Then while it's rendering, I apply IDP. Then I extract all the necessary information. So that's how it's supposed to be. So in other words, this browser, this IDP should be tightly integrated. You cannot have again a fragmented way of, hey, I got it, I put it a text file, I'm going to do that. You already lost the context. That's the one. There's one more important aspect. Many times, you know what happens? Your end page, not necessarily HTML page. It could be still a PDF page. For example, look at the FDA document. You want to know about any specific disease, you need to go one page, search, and then there is a drop down, click, and then you do all the things, and finally there will be a PDF document. How do I reach there? There is a 15 navigation I need to do to reach there, and you get the PDF document, right? And that is also another challenge. Why? While the navigation itself involves IDP, because every time when I render a page, I need to know which button I need to click, go to the next page. But if I want to automate this whole end-to-end, not a Selenium based though, Selenium is a rule based. If I want an AI based navigation, then I need an IDP tool over there, right? So the IDP is not always to capture the data, even for the navigation. The initial definition, when I say IDP, the word processing has a multiple meaning. One is a capture. Even there's another meaning here right now, right? The navigation. You can use the IDP tool to navigate also.
Very insightful, talking about different technology, the technical aspect of things. But let's talk about it from the future. We've talked about, I think you've seen this, I don't need to say this, but I think you've seen the GP3, you've seen Dial as well, you've seen some of these technologies, and I feel that they will be very instrumental in IDP. For example, they could, the GP3 could help generate synthetic data, like you discussed earlier on, because all this is happening at the same time. Now, what do you think IDP 2.0 is?
This is great question, and I'm more looking for IDP 2.2, right? It's going to be exciting in the coming months and coming years. So I look at it like four dimensions. The three is like literally intelligent document processing. The fourth is that the user experience, right? Now all of the four dimensions is going to the next level. Now the more important the processing part. As I said initially, beyond capture, what else we can do? Can we do a question answering, right? Can the documents gather all the insights, and then can it be proactively sending you insights out of it, right? So this is where it is going in the processing part. And then also the downstream, upstream, it's going to be more integrated. So that is the processing part how I see. In the document, as I said initially, like we're going to cover all type of document. Handwritten, well, I'm sure in a year down the line, we got a 95 about human quality, all the way go to the complex documents like web pages. We're going to cover everything, right? That's in the document side. Intelligence side, AI is keep on going, the exponential growth. There's a varieties of language models coming into the market. And then not only the language model, now we are unifying a language plus image processing model together, and there's varieties of models coming. And how do we take those models and then incorporate and then building a much intelligent is kind of evolving. The last is, but not least, is that the user experience itself. Now, as a end user, do I need to still code, or I can just start talking to them, natural interface, right? Ask a question like a Siri, and this is something we are really growing. So now, with combining all the four, what I see in IDP 2.0 is that it's going to be a beautiful user experience, almost like an iPhone kind of a moment. It's going to come, everything integrated, one vertical product. Any document, take it. Any intelligence available, whatever complex processing we can do, but all can be onboarded in a week, 2 week, so that enterprise companies can see the value super fast. The the tipping point is that if any enterprise company sees a value within a week, that's going to be huge adoption. Because today there's a little confusion. Oh, if I put an investment, when will I get a return? 6 months down the line, 8 months down the line? No, you get it in a 2 weeks down the line. Oh, that's going to be exciting, right? Now, with all of these fours coming together, now I see the IDP 2.0, maybe 6 months here down the line, it's going to completely change the way how we process documents.
I'm hoping to start seeing a lot of sentiment analysis. Just very few vendors on the market offering that as part of their IDP product. So there's a whole lot I'm expecting from NLP and image props. I think it'll be a game changer. I can't wait. But it'll be very interesting to see that. And I know we've spent a whole lot of time talking about so many interesting things. But as with any good show, it needs to come to an end. So I'm going to be closing a lot of things here. But before we close off, let's talk about your advice for companies looking to invest in IDP and intelligent automation next 12 months.
Always start with something simple. One of the advice I tell people is that it doesn't need a lot of investment, right? And you don't need a huge COE and all in your team. You could start with something simple, right? Just start it, right? That's a step one. Then and then the next advice, what I would suggest is that you would get really surprised. There are a lot of projects can be automated. I was talking to one of the great leaders. Said, "Hey, do you think there is a scope to automate?" He said, "Nah, probably no. No, you do have." Then when we start brainstorming, then we say we come up with like a 30, 40 use cases in his organization, which he himself not aware of that. Because everywhere there is a documents, right? So now the next thing is like educating the whole world, right? People who are completely business side, let's say, there is a RPA document, somebody is processing it. That person have absolutely no idea about the IDP world or intelligent automation world. The pain what he or she had, just living with that. Now we need to tell the world, no, this can be automated, right? So what we need to do in the coming days is that you don't need much automation, much investment. You can start automate ASAP. Second, you need to educate the whole people in the enterprise company that, hey, this all can be automated. So it's kind of a change management. And also third, like which I initially touched, the mindset. Bring your right mindset. You can automate, you can accelerate, not like 10%, 20%. You can accelerate like 2x, 5x. in a short period of time. So that's the pretty much advice I would suggest to any enterprise companies who want to get into IDP.
Great advice, great one. And we are coming to the end of the podcast. How can people reach out to you?
Oh, I'm obsessed with automation. I love brainstorming. If anyone want to brainstorm about any concepts, yeah, my LinkedIn is always open, and then they can DM me. Yeah.
Give Ansari a follow because Ansari is quite insightful. I've been following him for a while and we've been connected, and he has a lot of wealth of knowledge. So anyone that's really interested in IDP, intelligent automation, even RPA as well, it talks a whole lot, not just the generic, but also very specific use cases. And just final notes, once again, thanks for coming. I really appreciate you taking out your time. It's almost half seven here, and I know it's still in the morning for you. So as a whole, I appreciate your efforts coming here. Then I'm going to wrap it off with the full transcription will be available online. I will be posting them in the next coming weeks, and it's going to be available on rpajargonbuster.com. And always remember that if you needed someone to talk to about intelligent automation, particularly for the SME deployment and delivery, feel free to send us an email as well. My email is info@rpajargonbuster.com. And there's also a link from the website if you wanted to send an email. I'll also get that email as well. Then on to next time, stay informed.